The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. 12 massive thrones sat in a circle, each one carved from stone taken from the homeworld of each empire. In the center stood a single platform made of plain metal. This was where humans were allowed to speak. Park Do-hyun stood on that platform now. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served as humanity's ambassador for 23 years. In all that time, he had stood on this same platform over 1,000 times. He had made speeches, presented proposals, and asked for fairness. The answer was always the same: no. Today, the Valori High Minister was speaking. His name was Keth, and he was a creature that looked like a tall lizard wrapped in golden robes. His voice was smooth like oil, and his words were just as slippery. "The human merchant vessels create too much traffic in our shipping lanes," Keth said. He did not look at Do-hyun. None of them ever did. "We propose a new tax. 30% on all human trade ships passing through council space." Do-hyun felt his chest tighten. Human ships carried 73% of all goods in the galaxy. This tax would destroy human merchants. But he had learned long ago that anger was useless here. "May I speak?" Do-hyun asked. The council chair, an ancient Orivan with pale blue skin, waved one of her 4 hands. "You may observe. Voting members will now decide." Voting members. After 300 years of service, humans still could not vote. They could watch. They could suggest. They could beg. But they could not vote. The vote was quick. 12 hands raised, 12 voices said yes. The tax passed. Keth finally looked at Do-hyun. His lips pulled back to show rows of small, sharp teeth. It was supposed to be a smile. "Do not worry, Ambassador. Your people are clever. I am sure you will find a way to survive." Laughter echoed through the Great Hall. The Dramathi clicked their hard shells together in amusement. The Valori hissed their approval. Even the usually quiet Orovans allowed themselves small smiles. Do-hyun stood very still. He thought about the message he had received that morning from Earth. He thought about the years of planning. He thought about every insult, every broken promise. Every time humans had been called pets or servants or useful animals, he took a slow breath. Then he spoke. 300 years ago, humanity first made contact with the Valori Empire. Your ships were damaged. Your people were dying. We saved you. We asked for nothing in return. The laughter stopped. 250 years ago, the Dramathi faced a plague that killed millions. Human doctors worked without rest. They found a cure. They asked for nothing in return. The clicking of shells fell silent. For 3 centuries, human engineers have maintained your stations. Human navigators have guided your ships through the void corridors. Human teachers have educated your children. Human diplomats have prevented your wars. We built your communication networks. We designed your trading systems. We fed your hungry and healed your sick. Do-hyun's voice remained calm, steady, almost gentle. We asked only one thing: equality, a seat at the table, a voice in decisions that affect us. You gave us this platform instead. You gave us the right to watch and say nothing." He paused. The Great Hall was completely silent now. "Today, I am not here to ask again. I am here to inform you of a decision that has already been made." Do-hyun reached into his coat and pulled out a simple data chip. He placed it on the platform, effective immediately. "The United Human Worlds are withdrawing from the Galactic Council. All human personnel will leave Council space within 1 galactic cycle. All human technology, systems, and services will be deactivated. All treaties are void. All agreements are ended." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Keth laughed. It was a loud, harsh sound. "You cannot be serious." The Valori minister said. "Where will you go? What will you do? You need us far more than we need you." "Perhaps," Do-hyun said. He picked up the data chip. "I suppose we will find out." "This is a bluff," Keth continued. "A tantrum from emotional primates. You will come crawling back within a week, begging for scraps from our table." Do-hyun looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at each of the 12 council members in turn. His eyes finally rested on the Orivan chair. 300 years ago, an old human admiral named Yoon Sora stood on this platform. She warned you. She said that kindness is not weakness. She said that patience has limits. She asked you to treat us as partners, not as tools. He stepped down from the platform. You laughed at her too. Do-hyun walked toward the great doors. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind him, he heard whispers starting, confused murmurs, a few more laughs, but they sounded nervous now. The Dramathi Queen, Riss, raised her voice. Ambassador Park, you cannot simply leave. There are procedures, forms to file, negotiations to complete. Do-hyun stopped at the door. He did not turn around. There is nothing left to negotiate. You have made your position clear for 300 years. We have finally accepted it. He pushed open the great doors. Goodbye. The doors closed behind him. In the great hall, the 12 empires sat in confused silence. Then Keth waved one clawed hand dismissively. Ignore this theater, he said. The humans are dramatic creatures. They will return in a few days, apologizing for their outburst. They have nowhere else to go. The other council members nodded. This made sense to them. After all, what could humans possibly do without the great empires to guide them? Outside the great hall, Do-hyun walked to his shuttle. His aide, a young woman named Cho Minji, was waiting for him. Is it done? She asked. Do-hyun nodded. He looked back at the massive council building one last time. It was beautiful in a cold way. Towers of crystal and stone reaching toward the stars. A monument to power and pride. Contact Commander Beck, he said quietly. Tell her to begin the evacuation. All human personnel. Every station, every ship, every planet, in council space. Minji's hands shook slightly as she typed the message. Do you think they will try to stop us? Do-hyun almost smiled. They do not believe we are really leaving. By the time they understand, it will be too late. He stepped into the shuttle. The door closed. Within minutes, they were rising through the atmosphere, leaving the council world behind. On the planet below, the 12 empires continued their meeting. They discussed trade routes and border disputes. They argued about resources and territory. They did not give the humans another thought. They would soon. The first sign of trouble came on a Valori space station called Golden Ring. It was one of the largest stations in the Empire, home to over 2 million Valori citizens. It floated in orbit above a gas giant, its lights visible from 3 planets away. On the morning after Ambassador Park's departure, a Valori officer named Thren noticed something strange. The human workers were packing their things, all of them. At the same time, where are you going? Thren asked a human engineer named Lee Tae-woo. Tae-woo did not stop packing. His movements were quick and careful. Home, he said simply. Home? But your contract runs for another 5 years. The contracts are void. All of them. We are leaving. Thren laughed. You cannot all leave at once. Who will maintain the power systems? Who will run the water recyclers? Who will monitor the hull integrity? Tae-woo finally looked at him. His face showed no anger. Just exhaustion. You will have to figure that out yourselves. Within 6 hours, every human on Golden Ring was gone. They boarded transport ships that had been waiting in orbit. No one had noticed the ships arriving over the past week. No one had paid attention. The station commander, a Valori general named Drex, was not worried. Humans were replaceable. His own engineers could handle their simple machines. He ordered his staff to take over the human positions. By evening, the first problem appeared. The air recyclers began making strange sounds. A Valori technician opened the main panel and stared at the machinery inside. She had never seen anything like it. Wires and tubes connected in patterns that made no sense to her. Small lights blinked in codes she could not read. Where are the instructions? She asked. There were no instructions. The humans had built these systems centuries ago. They had improved them year after year. No one else had ever needed to understand how they worked. By midnight, the water recyclers failed. By morning, the lights began to flicker. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. On the Dramathi homeworld, Queen Riss sat in her throne room and listened to reports with growing horror. The food distribution network had collapsed. For 200 years, humans had managed the flow of grain and meat and vegetables from farms to cities. They had created complex systems that moved food to where it was needed, when it was needed. Nobody starved. Nobody went hungry. Now the food sat rotting in warehouses while cities began to run empty. Dramathi officials tried to fix the system, but the computers spoke in languages they did not understand. The code was written by humans. The passwords were known only to humans. "Find them," Queen Riss screamed at her advisors. "Bring them back. Force them if you must." But the humans were already gone. Their ships had been packed and ready. They had planned this for years, perhaps decades. Every human in Dramathi space had left within 48 hours. It was like watching water drain from a sink. One moment they were there. The next, they were gone. On the Valori homeworld, High Minister Keth stood in his communication center and watched his screens go dark one by one. The human technicians who had maintained the network were gone. Without them, the ancient systems began to fail. Connections dropped, signals scattered. Within a week, the Valori Empire could not talk to its own colonies. "This is impossible," Keth muttered. "We built an empire that spans 1,000 stars. We conquered a dozen species. We cannot be brought low by the departure of servants." But they were not servants. They never had been. They were the foundation. And now the foundation was gone, far from Council space. On a green world called New Busan, Commander Baek Gina watched the evacuation numbers on her screen. 94% complete. Ships were arriving every hour, carrying humans from every corner of the galaxy. Families reunited on landing pads. Children saw grandparents they had only known through video calls. Engineers who had spent their lives maintaining alien machines finally stepped onto human soil. Gina walked among them sometimes. She shook hands and offered words of welcome. But she felt no joy, only a heavy tiredness that had built up over many years. "Commander," her aide said, running up to her. "We have received messages from the Valori and Dramathi. They are demanding we return. They say they will use force if necessary." Gina almost laughed. "Force? With what? Their military ships have human navigational systems, human weapons targeting, human engine modifications. They cannot even fly straight without us." It was true. Over the centuries, humans had improved every technology they touched. They made engines faster. They made weapons more accurate. They made shields stronger. The empires had accepted these gifts without question. Now they realized that they had no idea how any of it worked. On the Orivan homeworld, a young scholar named Pol sat alone in her empty classroom. She was not like the other Orivans. She had always liked the humans. She had learned their languages, read their books, listened to their music. Her favorite teacher had been a human woman named Shin Mira. For 10 years, Professor Shin had taught Pol about history and philosophy. She had never asked for special treatment. She had never complained about being paid less than Orivan teachers. She had simply taught, day after day, sharing her knowledge with anyone who would listen. Paul had never thanked her, not once in 10 years. She had always meant to, but there was always tomorrow. Now Professor Shin was gone, and there were no more tomorrows. Paul found an old card on her desk. It was from Professor Shin, given to her on her graduation day. She had never opened it. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The message inside was short. "You have a good heart, Paul. Use it well. The galaxy needs more kindness." Paul started to cry. She cried for a long time. The days passed. The chaos grew. The Valori Empire declared a state of emergency. The Dramathi began rationing food. The other empires scrambled to fill the gaps left by human workers, but there were not enough trained people. There had never been a need. The humans had always been there. In the council's great hall, the remaining representatives met in growing panic. Their lights flickered. Their translation devices malfunctioned. Their communication systems crackled with static. "We must send a delegation," one of them said. "We must apologize. We must offer whatever they want." But they did not know where the humans had gone. They did not know how to reach them. For 300 years, Humans had always come to them. The empires had never learned the path to human space. They had never cared to ask. Keth sat in his darkening chamber and stared at nothing. In his mind, he heard Ambassador Park's calm voice. Goodbye. Such a small word. Such a final word. Outside, the lights of his empire flickered and died. One by one. 1 week after the humans left, the first shots were fired. It happened on the border between Valori and Dromathi space. For centuries, the two empires had hated each other. They had fought wars that killed billions. They had burned each other's worlds and poisoned each other's waters. Only the Galactic Council had kept them from destroying one another completely. But the Council was built on human diplomacy. Human negotiators had written the peace treaties. Human monitors had watched the border. Human translators had turned angry words into careful language. Without them, old wounds opened fresh and bleeding. A Valori patrol ship crossed into Dromathi territory. The Dromathi said it was on purpose. The Valori said their navigation systems had failed. It did not matter who was right. The Dromathi opened fire. The Valori fired back. Within hours, 3 ships were destroyed, and 40 soldiers were dead. Queen Riss demanded justice. High Minister Keth demanded an apology. Neither would bend. Neither would listen. There were no humans to sit between them and find the words that could have stopped the violence. On a dozen border stations, fighting broke out. Soldiers who had served together for decades suddenly saw enemies instead of allies. The old hatreds, pushed down for so long, came rushing back like poison. The interstellar economy collapsed next. Human traders had created the networks that moved money between empires. They had built the systems that tracked debts and payments. They had designed the codes that kept everyone honest. Now those systems went dark. Banks could not verify accounts. Merchants could not process sales. Entire industries stopped because nobody knew who owed what to whom. Prices shot up. Panic spread. On rich worlds and poor worlds alike, people began to hoard food and water. The Oravan Collective tried to help. They had always been the peacekeepers of the Council. The calm voices in angry rooms. Their diplomats traveled to the Valori and Dromathi homeworlds, hoping to stop the fighting before it became a full war. But Oravan diplomats were not human diplomats. They did not understand the subtle art of making enemies see each other as people. They spoke in cold logic, when what was needed was warm understanding. Their peace talks failed within days. On Earth, President Cha Min-jae sat in his office and watched the galaxy burn. He was a quiet man, older than he looked, with deep lines around his eyes from years of worry. He had been president for only 2 years, but he had known this day was coming for much longer. They all had. His aide knocked on the door. "Sir, the Council has sent another message. They are begging for our return. They offer full voting rights, equal status, everything we asked for." Min-jae nodded slowly. Too late. 300 years too late. What should I tell them? Nothing. They will learn that our silence speaks louder than their words. That evening, President Min-jae stood before a camera and spoke to all of humanity. His speech was broadcast across human space, but he knew the alien empires would intercept it too. He wanted them to hear, "My fellow humans," he began. His voice was steady but tired. 300 years ago, we reached out to the stars with hope in our hearts. We found life. We found civilizations. We thought we had found friends. He paused. We were wrong. For 3 centuries, we served the Galactic Council with loyalty and skill. We built their stations. We healed their sick. We taught their children. We kept their peace. We asked only to be treated as equals, to have a voice in decisions that affected our lives. They called us pets. They called us servants. They patted our heads and took everything we offered. When we asked for respect, they laughed. Min-jae's hands tightened on the edges of his desk. They are not laughing now. I take no pleasure in their suffering. Neither should any of you. We are not a people of revenge. We are a people of patience and hard work. We built their world when they could not. We can build our own. Let them learn what we always knew. Let them understand that kindness is not weakness. Let them feel the weight of every insult, every broken promise, every time they treated us as less than we are. And when they have learned, truly learned, perhaps we can talk again. Perhaps we can build something new, something better, something built on respect instead of arrogance. He looked directly into the camera. To those aliens who were different, who treated us with kindness, know that you are welcome among us. We do not hate your people. We hate only the cruelty we were shown. If you seek a new home, a new beginning, our doors are open. To the empires that used us, you are on your own now. May you learn what you should have known all along. The broadcast ended. In secret, far from the cameras and speeches, Dr. Kang Yuna was working on something else entirely. She was humanity's greatest expert on alien cultures. She had spent 40 years studying how other species thought, lived, and loved. She understood them better than they understood themselves. Now she sat in a small room on New Busan with a group of unlikely guests. There were 3 Orovans, including the young scholar Pole. There was a Dramathi scientist who had refused to hate humans even when his people demanded it. There was even a Valori merchant who had quietly helped human refugees escape. You understand what you are risking, Yuna said to them. Your empires will call you traitors. Pole nodded. Her 4 hands were folded in her lap. My empire called humans traitors for wanting to be free. I think the word has lost its meaning. The Dramathi scientist, whose name was Vex, clicked his shell in agreement. My people are dying because of pride. I would rather live with shame than die with honor. The Valori merchant, torn, simply shrugged. Business is business. The smart traders always know when to change sides. Yuna almost smiled. Very well. You will stay with us. When the time comes, you will help us build bridges to those who want peace. And if nobody wants peace? Pole asked. Yuna thought of President Min Jae's words. She thought of all the humans who had suffered. She thought of all the aliens who had been kind. Someone always wants peace, she said. We just have to find them. Outside the window, human ships continued to arrive from across the galaxy. Millions of people coming home. Millions of stories of patience pushed too far, and in the distant council space, the empires continued to crumble. One by one, like stars winking out in an endless night. 1 month after the humans left, Queen Riss of the Dramathi was dead. Her generals killed her in her own throne room. They said she had failed to protect her people. They said she had let the humans leave without fighting. They said she had been weak when strength was needed. The truth was simpler. The generals were hungry. Everyone was hungry. The food distribution system had never been fixed. Millions of Dramathi were starving, and someone had to pay for it. Riss died quickly, at least. A single strike from a soldier's blade. Her body was thrown into the street, and the generals began fighting each other for the empty throne. On the Valori homeworld, High Minister Keth watched the news of Riss's death with cold fear. He had always hated the Dramathi queen, but seeing her end made him understand his own danger. The Valori people were not starving yet, but their anger was just as deep. The riots had started 3 days ago. Crowds filled the streets of every major city, demanding answers, demanding blood. They threw stones at government buildings. They burned statues of Keth that had once stood in public squares. They screamed for someone to fix what had been broken, but nobody knew how to fix it. The human systems were locked behind passwords and codes. The human machines spoke in languages no Valori could read. Every attempt to repair them only made things worse. Keth fled in the night. He took a small ship and a handful of loyal guards. He had no plan except to survive. Everything he had built, everything he had taken for granted, was burning behind him. He flew toward the only place he could think of. Human space. The journey took 3 weeks. His ship was old and slow. Human-built ships were fast. But Keth did not have one of those. He did not have human navigators to guide him through the dangerous passages. Twice, his ship nearly crashed into asteroid fields that human maps had always helped travelers avoid. When he finally reached the border of human space, patrol ships surrounded him immediately. Identify yourself, a human voice demanded. Keth swallowed his pride. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. I am Keth. I was once the High Minister of the Valori Empire. I come seeking. He paused. The word stuck in his throat. I come seeking refuge. There was silence on the radio. Then the human voice spoke again. Please hold your position. Someone will come to speak with you. He waited for hours. His guards grew restless. Some of them whispered about turning back, but there was nothing to turn back to. The Valori Empire was eating itself alive. Finally, a human shuttle approached. The door opened, and a woman in a military uniform stepped out. Her face was calm, her movements precise. She looked at Keth the way a scientist might look at a specimen. "I am Commander Bake Gina," she said. "I have been asked to evaluate your request." Keth bowed. He had never bowed to a human before. His body resisted, but he forced himself lower. "Please," he said. "I know what I was. I know what I said. I know I laughed when I should have listened. But I am begging you now. Give me shelter. Give me a chance to live." Gina studied him for a long moment. Her expression did not change. "Do you know how many humans died because of policies you supported?" she asked. "Do you know how many families were separated because you refused us the right to travel freely? Do you know how many dreams were crushed because you would not let us be equals?" Keth's legs trembled. "I did not. I did not think." "No, you did not think. That is the problem. None of you ever thought about us as real people with real lives and real pain." She stepped closer. Keth expected anger. He expected hatred. But her eyes were just tired. "We are not going to kill you," she said. "We are not like you. You will be given shelter. You will be given food. You will be given a chance to start again. But you will never lead again. You will never have power again. You will live as an ordinary person, the same as anyone else." Keth's eyes filled with tears. Relief and shame mixed together until he could not tell them apart. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Gina nodded once. "Do not thank me. Thank the humans who chose to be better than what we were taught." She turned and walked back to her shuttle. On Earth, another meeting was taking place. The young Orivan scholar Pole stood before the human parliament, her 4 hands clutching a data tablet. Behind her sat representatives from 12 different species, all of them refugees, all of them people who had rejected their empire's cruelty. "We have come with a petition," Pole said. Her translator device made her words sound flat, but she tried to put emotion into them anyway. "It is signed by 4 million beings from across the galaxy. Not governments, not officials, just ordinary people who valued humanity when our leaders did not." She activated the tablet. Names scrolled across the screen. Valori names, Dramathi names, Orivan names. Species that had mocked humans for centuries, now begging for their forgiveness. "We do not ask you to return to the council," Pole continued. "That institution is dead. It deserved to die. We ask only that you do not abandon us entirely. We ask for the chance to build something new, something better, with you, not above you." The parliament was silent. Hundreds of human faces watched her, and she could not read any of them. Then an old woman stood. Her hair was pure white, her body bent with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Pole recognized her from the history books. This was Admiral Yun Sora, the woman who had warned the council 300 years ago. "I spoke to your leaders once," Sora said. "I told them that kindness is not weakness. I told them that patience has limits. They laughed at me." Pole lowered her head. "They were fools." "Yes, they were." Sora moved slowly to the front of the chamber. "But you are not them. You are here, risking everything, asking for a future you have not earned." She stopped in front of Pole. Her old hand reached out and rested gently on the Orivan's shoulder. "That takes courage. Real courage. The kind of courage your leaders never had." Sora looked back at the parliament. "I have given my life to humanity. I have watched us be used and mocked and hurt. I could demand revenge. I could demand that we crush these empires and rule in their place." Her voice hardened. "But that is not who we are. We are better than that. We have always been better than that." She turned to Pole. "Tell your people this. We will not save them. We will not fix their problems for them. But if they want to stand beside us, as equals, as partners, we will not turn them away." Pole felt tears running down her face. She did not try to hide them. "Thank you," she said, "from the bottom of my heart." "Thank you." Sora smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. "Do not thank us yet. Building something new is much harder than tearing something old apart. The real work is just beginning. Outside the Parliament building, the sun was setting over Earth. Paul stepped out into the warm evening air and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, empires were falling, billions were suffering the consequences of their leaders' pride. But here, on this small planet, something new was growing. Something built on respect instead of arrogance, on partnership instead of dominance. Paul allowed herself, for the first time in months, to feel hope. 3 months after the humans left, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Great Council Station, once the center of power for 1,000 years, drifted cold and dark in space. Its lights had failed weeks ago. Its life support had shut down. The last survivors had been evacuated by human rescue ships that came not for revenge, but for mercy. Now the station was a tomb, a monument to pride and blindness. Ships sometimes passed nearby, and their crews would look at it and remember what arrogance costs. Ambassador Park Do-hyun stood in a new building on New Busan. It was smaller than the council hall, simpler in design. No towering ceilings meant to intimidate. No thrones carved from conquered worlds, just clean walls, comfortable seats, and a round table where everyone sat at the same height. Today was the founding of the Human Compact. 12 species had sent representatives. Not the old empires, those were gone or dying. These were the survivors, the reformers, the ordinary people who had chosen to reach for something better. Paul was there. Now officially the first Orivan ambassador to the Compact. The Dramathi scientist Vex represented what remained of his scattered people. Even Torn, the Valori merchant, had been given a seat at the table. He joked that he had finally found a deal worth making, and there were new faces too. Species that had been ignored by the old council, considered too small or too weak to matter. Now they sat as equals, their voices heard for the first time in history. Do-hyun looked around the table. He remembered standing on that cold platform in the council hall, being told he could only watch. He remembered the laughter when he announced humanity's departure. No one was laughing now. "We are not here to create a new empire," Do-hyun said, his voice quiet but clear. "We are not here to rule or dominate or punish. We are here to try something that has never been done before." He placed his hands flat on the table. True equality. Every voice matters. Every species has a vote. Every decision is made together. The Orivan representative next to Paul raised a hand. "How do we know the humans will not become what the old powers were? You have every advantage now. You could crush us if you wished." It was a fair question. Everyone at the table waited for the answer. Do-hyun nodded slowly. "You are right. We could. But that is not why we left the council. We left because we refused to be slaves. We have no interest in making others into slaves. If we betray these principles, then everything we suffered was for nothing." He looked at each face around the table. "We do not ask you to trust us because of our words. We ask you to watch our actions, hold us accountable, challenge us when we fall short. That is how equals treat each other." Pole spoke up, her 4 hands gesturing as she talked. "I have lived among the humans for 3 months now. I have seen their cities and their schools and their hospitals. They are not perfect. They argue and disagree and sometimes fail. But they try. They always try to be fair." She turned to Do-hyun. "I believe in the compact. I believe it can work. But Paul believes in it too. That should mean something." Light applause spread around the table. It was hesitant at first, then stronger. The compact was born. On the other side of New Busan, Dr. Kang Yuna was opening the doors to her new university. She had dreamed of this place for 20 years. A school where human and alien students would learn together, where young minds could mix and grow and understand each other. The first class had 200 students. 40 of them were human. The rest came from 8 different species, including some that had never had access to education before. Yuna stood at the front of the main hall and looked at the rainbow of faces before her. Scales and fur and skin and shells, young eyes full of curiosity and hope. "You are the future," she told them. "Not the future we inherited, but the future we will build. Everything that happened before the wars, the hatred, the empires that is the past, you will write something new." A young Dramathi raised a claw. What if we cannot change? What if the old ways come back? Yuna smiled. Then you will fight them. Not with weapons, but with knowledge, with understanding, with the simple truth that everyone deserves respect, no matter where they come from. She thought of all the years she had spent studying alien cultures, all the ways she had tried to build bridges, all the times she had been ignored. It will not be easy, she admitted. Nothing worth doing ever is. But you will have something the old generation did not. You will have each other. Far across the galaxy, the old empires continued to struggle. The Valori fragments had split into a dozen small kingdoms, each claiming to be the true heir of the fallen empire. The Dramathi had formed a council of generals, but they spent more time fighting each other than rebuilding. Other species had simply scattered, their people becoming refugees on worlds that would accept them. Not all of them joined the compact. Some were too proud. Some were too angry. Some simply could not let go of the past, but more joined every month. Ships arrived at New Busan carrying survivors who had heard of the new alliance. They came with empty hands and open hearts, ready to start again. Commander Gina had traded her military uniform for a peacekeeping role. She led a joint fleet of human and alien ships that patrolled the space between former empires. They did not conquer, they did not punish, they simply kept the peace, giving the wounded galaxy time to heal. One day, Gina's ship received a distress signal from a damaged Valori transport. Inside were 300 refugees, mostly children, escaping from a civil war. Gina's crew rescued every one of them. They gave them food and medicine and warm blankets. The Valori children stared at the human soldiers with wide, frightened eyes. They had been taught that humans were enemies. Gina knelt down in front of a small Valori girl who was trembling with fear. "It is all right," Gina said gently. "You are safe now. No one will hurt you." The girl looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched Gina's hand. "Why are you helping us?" the girl asked. "We were told you hate us." Gina felt her heart break a little. "We do not hate you. We were just tired of being hated. There is a difference." She gathered the girl into her arms and carried her to the medical bay. Behind her, other humans were doing the same for the other children. No questions asked. No payment demanded. Just simple kindness. On New Busan, in a garden that had been planted by human and Orivan hands together, Ambassador Pol sat on a bench and watched the sunset. Beside her, 2 children were playing in the grass. One was human, a little boy with dark hair and a loud laugh. The other was Dramathi, a youngling whose shell was still soft and growing. They chased each other around the trees, making up games with rules that changed every minute. They did not care that their species had once been enemies. They did not know about the old hatreds. They only knew that they were friends. President Cha Min-jae walked up and sat down beside Pol. He looked tired, as he always did now. Leading the compact was harder than leading humanity alone. But his eyes were peaceful. "Do you think it will last?" Pol asked him. "This new way?" Min-jae watched the children play. The human boy tripped and fell, and the Dramathi youngling helped him up without hesitation. "I do not know," Min-jae admitted. "History is full of good ideas that failed, full of hopeful beginnings that ended in tragedy." He paused. "But I know this. We have to try. We have to believe that we can be better than what came before. Otherwise, what is the point of any of it?" Pol nodded slowly. She thought of Professor Shin, her old human teacher. She thought of the card she still carried in her pocket, worn soft from constant handling. "You have a good heart," the card had said. "Use it well." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. The children's laughter echoed across the garden. Pol allowed herself to smile. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we finally learned." Above them, the stars began to appear. One by one, a galaxy that had known so much pain was slowly, carefully, beginning to heal. It would take years. It would take generations. There would be setbacks and failures and moments of despair. But for now, in this garden, on this world, there was peace, and that was a start.